stuff in them. So that would make sense. And also hentai.
Yeah.
People would prefer hentai. I got in a lot of trouble last year because of the scale, because the hentai was actually made up of 3 different ones, and the people in those other 2 groups did not like what I was saying. Grouping them in. We looked at sexism. I'm sorry, we had to look at it because it's a major thing in anime. And we looked at, we got the 45 shows from the 9 most popular anime. We made some undergraduates go through and watch them and code for things like hypermasculinity and representation of women. Women were underrepresented. Males were not hypermasculine, which is unusual compared to the US, where we see that. But overall, anime is a little sexist. Sorry. This was the data. This wasn't my opinion. And then we looked at the more frequently people watch anime, the higher they are on beliefs or endorsement of sexist attitudes. But those were mediated through the genre. And you could read the paper to figure out which genres. It was the hentai fans was the main mediator for hostile sexism, which is just not liking women. If you like drama anime, that was good. That was related to less sexist beliefs. Anyway, let's move on. We looked at your favorite character. For example, there's this one theory about your actual self, your ideal self, and your ought self, who you ought to be. And people's favorite characters were rated highly on actual and ideal. In other words, their favorite characters are something that embodies something they wish they had, that they wish to grow or move toward, but also they saw something similar in themselves in that favorite character. We've looked at psychological disorders. Main psychological disorders were low, and we're thinking that's mainly because y'all are so young as a group, which we'll get to in a minute. The one thing that was not low, that was higher than the US general population, was autism. So there's a higher amount of people in the fandom with autism compared to if you walked out onto the street in the general population. But this is not unique to anime. We also looked at bronies and we looked at furries, and both of those groups also were higher. So I guess nobody's better. Yeah, and we also looked at Star Wars. So all of them were higher. In other words, it's not just y'all. It's most of the fantasy fandoms. They're higher in autism. Okay, anyway, let's move on. We've looked at cosplayers specifically. For example, the personality of cosplayers. Did they differ from anime fans who are not cosplayers? I don't want to get too. They're more extroverted. Lo and behold. Cosplayers also have higher well-being compared to non-cosplaying anime fans. And for us, the results were showing that the main reason is that they disclose their identity more to other people. They don't conceal their anime fan-ish-ism to non-anime fans. Or they do disclose. So being out is good for cosplayers. We've looked at well-being in general. One of the best predictors of well-being in the fandom is face-to-face friendships. Not the online friendships, but face-to-face actual, this, right now, what you're doing right now. And actually being at the con, you have higher well-being now than you do when you're not at a con. But there's a thing called post-con depression, which is real. We measured it in furries, and it's a real thing. And it really does happen. Okay, and then we measured stigma. In general, people who are not anime fans don't like you, and they do not want to date you. That's so far the findings we've had.
Yeah, that's about right. Personal experience.
Yeah. Well, I guess the truth is the truth.
Okay, so I'll talk a bit about just general demographics, and then we'll get into last year's survey. So, who are the general anime? And I should preface this by being the survey we do, which y'all please go do, either online or paper pencil. I'm just showing you where the table is again. is in English, so people who do not speak English are not able to participate. And this is also data that is mostly from the US, the UK, Canada, again, English-speaking countries. So keep that in mind when we go through that. So this is the age of anime fans, starting at 18. We're only, because of ethics, we are not allowed to have children. So it starts at 18. And as you can see, majority of the fandom is rather young. That's because we grouped like everything above 41.
Why do they drop out?
This is not unusual for fandoms that people tend to drop off. And what we've noticed in other fandoms is usually the main reason people drop out is drama. They just get sick of the drama in the fandom. And I would bet that's similar to anime fandoms. The ethnicity, anime fans tend to be white.
Sorry, just about the age thing, that was cross-sectional, not longitudinal, right?
Cross-sectional.
Not necessarily dropping out, it could be like a generational gap, right?
In other fandoms, we do see dropouts though, and I would bet we would see the same thing for anime. Not that, look, I'm an anime fan and I'm an old man.
I kind of agree with her because I've never really met anyone who actually liked anime and got out of it. Ever.
See, oh my, now we need to do a longitudinal study. You know how hard those are? The attrition on those things?
The ride never ends.
If everybody in this room signed up, and we got 5 of your friends to sign up, we could do this. I'll come back next year, hopefully, with that. We'll see how my year goes.
How dedicated are you to it?
I'm very dedicated, maybe not as much to longitudinal study. Anime fans are white, okay. Anime fans are male, the majority. Let's see, in terms of gender, moving from masculine completely to feminine completely, I mean, it kind of fits. The red bars are females, blue bars are males.
Tradition.
And if you were asking what about the gender, sex, other category, this is what the other category looks like beyond the male, female. These are the breakdowns for the others. I'm not going to read them.
That's a safe bet.
I know this feels like a classroom right now. There is no test. This is the sexual orientation for both males and females in the fandom. So this is exclusively heterosexual. So in general, mainly heterosexual. So if you grouped predominantly heterosexual, only incidentally, along with exclusively, most of the fandom tends to be straight. Okay.
We're good. We're good.
We're just laying down a lot of demographics. If we ask, are you dating? What's your relationship status? It's mostly single, especially for males. Because of the age. It could be the age. That's good. It is what it is. In terms of education, most anime fans tend to be, again, remember, we can only do 18 and above. So if we had below 8, IRB is never going to let us get below 18. But anyway, generally educated. Most anime fans are in college right now or have completed college. So that's good, right? Smart. In terms of occupation, like I just said, most anime fans are currently in college. And the samples we have. And there was a stereotype that anime fans would be more IT jobs. That did not come out, as you can see. Here is, where is it? Computer IT related, below 10%. In terms of living, or where anime fans are living, So what we said was, okay, only 25 and higher in age, and then we see that disappears. Right?
Well, not really.
You also have to take into account our economic times that we're in. In terms of political orientation, most anime fans tend to be liberal. So if I consider anime fans a voting bloc, it would be, you would probably be not voting for Trump in the next election. And by the way, I saw next to the research table they're doing voter registration. Yes, if you are not registered to vote, go get registered.
I got a question. Have you compared this to ones of like the general population?
Oh, I have not compared it to general population. But most geeky fandoms tend to be liberal.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That's right.
At least the ones we study. Okay. So let's finally get into the meat of today's talk, which was last year. Remember last year? So last year we had over 2,000 anime fans complete the survey. 369 of them were from here at Animefest last year. I wish we could get that number up. Please take our survey. And then the rest were online. Again, mostly male. Generally young. And we had people from 76 different countries complete the survey. But again, it's 76 countries, it'll be like one person from Bulgaria. One person from Lithuania, some just small countries. So most of it's US, and then Canada, UK, Germany. And that's what we tend to get every year. In our survey, we kind of have miscellaneous type questions that were kind of fun, that we were just interested in, and that may lead to future research, so they're kind of feelers. This is the miscellaneous ones that we asked. We asked to say yes or no, mark off if you are one of these things. And this is a broad list of things that are both within the fandom and outside the fandom. PC gamers were the number one. One was anime fan. Everybody was an anime fan. And then 66% PC gamers, 47% console, 47% casual gamers. Now you understand why there is game tests going on right now in conjunction. Hentai fans and stuff. We're going to have a paper coming out about hentai fans, and one good thing about hentai fans is they're very tolerant and open of other cultures. And other 34% of people in this room. A figurine collector, it was one person on Reddit said after seeing this was like, you either don't collect figurines or you get a bunch.
Yeah.
There's very few in the mid-range. Cosplayers, in this study was 16.7%. If you do it at just the con, you get a higher percentage. Because that's where they go to express themselves. But this was because there's such a large amount of online that it was a bit lower. Somebody, a fan, kept saying, you should include smart dolls.
Gold jointed dolls, yeah.
Yeah, and so I did this past year, and it was 1.3%, which is so small that we can't really do much with that. But yes.
Could you explain what a smart doll is?
It's that.
It's that. They're very articulate, like you can like pose them a lot easier. And,
Oh, okay.
yeah, because they have like each individual joint.
I see.
Yeah.
What's your big one? Look at Danny Chow.
Oh, geez, I'm just making money. Let's move on. In terms of the amount of money people spend, this is where anime fans spend their money on average. Of course, the majority of money goes to anime conventions, because it's very expensive. I'm going to breeze through some of this, because it's the miscellaneous. We'll get to the more meaty stuff. How often do you dream, or are your dreams in an anime world? Not often. People don't really have anime-related dreams. How often are anime characters in your dreams? Very rarely people have anime characters in their dreams. I often view anime-related pornographic material. And so there's kind of like the people are like no, and then more people say yes. And I haven't broken this down by sex yet. We'll see what happens then. Anime-related pornography influenced me in becoming part of the anime community. Most people say no to that. Anime fans have an influence on what the anime industry produces, and most say yes, and that's more interesting to me because it's like you feel like you have power over the industry. People who identify as LGBTQ are accepted within the fandom. Most people agree that it's a very open community. People who identify as gender diverse are accepted in the fandom. Again, a huge majority of people agree with this, which is good. We also asked which anime has the worst which shows that there's no like 5% of say Sword Art Online, but that's a really small percent. There's no like one thing that people hate, right? Or one
It
thing.
could be 50%.
There's 83 different shows, so there's a huge variety of different things. And then also these are like the most mainstream popular shows, so they're usually the ones with the biggest fan base, which might, they're also usually younger fan base. So there's a lot of qualifiers to put on this list. Okay, so let's finally get into this. One of the things I was looking at last year was elitism. And before I get into elitism, I'll go on a very, very short lecture. This is going to be a super mini lecture about social identity perspective. Henry Tajfel, who's pictured there, said that individuals, we all belong to different groups. I am white, I am male, I'm a professor, I'm a social psychology professor, I'm a researcher. These are all different identities. I'm an anime fan. These are all different identities that I hold. So we all have different identities. Tajfel says individuals strive to gain or maintain positive and distinct identities. So we try to drop identities that are not positive and distinct and get identities that are positive and distinct. Or if we're in a high status identity group, white male, try to keep our high status. He also talked about in-group bias, so we tend to favor our in-group over out-groups. And one of the main things that we'll be talking about today is he talked about in-group identification, which is the degree of psychological connection you have with your group. Okay. And those are the two ones I'll mention today. His graduate student, after Tajfel died, continued doing research on this idea, and he came out with self-categorization theory, which is just piggybacking off social identity theory, which what I'm going to talk about in terms of today's research is the more you identify, so that in-group identification, the more you're going to follow the content of the group. And the content of the group are the norms, behaviors, beliefs, emotions, what it means to be a prototypical group member. Okay, did I lose everybody now? So I wanted to talk about elitism. But before that, we did this one study where we looked at entitlement, which in my head at that time, a few years ago, I was thinking that kind of is the idea I was getting at, the better than thou thing. And what we did was we made this scale, we gave it to 3 different groups, and these were the results. So we gave it to furries, anime fans, and fantasy sport fans. And for anime fans, it was fanship, which is how much you love anime, is what that is, identification with the thing. Whereas fandom, so fanship is I love anime, fandom is I love all the other people in the anime community. Okay, so fanship, the amount of time you were in the fandom, that your own perception of yourself is socially awkward, and degree of personality of extroversion predicted more like you would show entitled attitudes. Again, that scale being things like you would want an artist to email you back right away if you emailed them. So you're entitled to something you do not necessarily deserve. But that, I was thinking like that a couple years ago, that didn't answer the question. That wasn't elitism. So so we went back to it. Let's get to elitism. Study one, we started with furries. Fanship, this is an example item, is I strongly identify as being a furry. Fandom, which is the community. I see myself as a member of the furry community. And then we came up with 9 elitism items. And we did a principal components analysis, which what that does is kind of group these items into kind of groupy things. Like these items go together, and these items go together into different factors. And the first 4 items we kind of thought were getting at self-inflation. You see yourself as better and good, like you're super knowledgeable. And then the next 3 items were about other derogation, putting other people down in some way through expression of your elitism. And then the last 2 items didn't make it in because they cross-loaded. They showed high loadings on both of the factors. Okay, so there's the scale that we then gave to anime fans. Actually, before that, here with the furries, we see that fanship and fandom are strongly correlated with one another, which makes sense. If I love anime, I probably will also like y'all. But not necessarily. You can love anime and not like anybody else in this room. It can happen. Fandom, again, that's your identification with the group, predicted lower other derogation. So you weren't going to insult other people in the fandom if you highly identified with the fandom. Whereas fanship was positively related with both self-inflation and other derogation. Within anime fans, we gave them measures of fanship, fandom. We have this scale we've been working on for a few years about commitment, which is, these are example components of this idea of being committed, which is like behavioral and time investment commitments. And then we also included a measure of gatekeeping that we came up with. If you do not know what gatekeeping is, this is an example of gatekeeping, where it's kind of this idea that you're kind of pushing, you're putting up barriers to the fandom. You're not an anime fan unless you do X. And these were the specific items we used to measure gatekeeping. For example, there is such a thing as a poser or wannabe anime fan. Again, they're making a distinction that there is a gate, and some people are not on the inside of that gate. And so here was what we came up with, which would be commitment, fandom, fanship, predicting these mediators of the elitism factors, which then moving on to gatekeeping, because we would think the people who are elitists are probably the people who are gatekeeping the most in the fandom. And commitment was positive, predicted both self-inflation, other derogation, elitism. Fandom, remember that you love other people in this room, you're less likely to self-inflate and you're less likely to derogate others. And fanship was that positive that we saw again. So in other words, fandom, good, fandom, too much of it is not good, and people who are elitist gatekeep. Moving on, helping. So past research shows, there's a large amount of research showing that just belonging to a group is related to positive well-being, psychological well-being. This is when you see, for example, religion. People who are highly religious tend to have higher well-being than people who are not religious. And one of the reasons for being is because you're part of a group. So if you belong to multiple groups, you tend to have higher well-being. We've looked at fandom in general, so fans of anything, like sport, Barbie dolls, anything they were wanting to be a part of. And is that a question? And what we found was the degree of psychological connection with the fandom predicted well-being. It went through the mediator. These were different reasons people belong to fandoms, like purpose in life, escapism, and social connections. And the connection between fandom and well-being went through the social connections. Again, making friends is good for you. Making friends here is good for you. Make some friends. In social identity, there's been some research with fans. So sport fans, What they did was they set up a charity that was for the home team, or the same charity, but it was represented by the away team. People are giving more money to the home team. Again, in-group favoritism, in-group bias. This one, oh, too fast. Another study, they had this person fall down and the t-shirt was either the in-group fan, like, what are we in? What is it, the Cowboys? Y'all don't know, because I already know you don't watch sport. So let's say Cowboys versus Saints. Those are two teams, correct?
Two sports Browns. Yes.
Okay, Redskins. Let's go Redskins. So let's say y'all were walking as part of a psychology study, you would go from one building to another, and you're a Cowboys fan, and you don't. And a person falls down, and the measure is, do you help the person who fell down and hurt themselves or not? And the person's either wearing a Cowboy shirt or a Redskins shirt. And lo and behold, they're going to help people wearing the Cowboy shirt more often than would with the person wearing the Redskins shirt. I'm giving too much background here. Let me move on. Helping and well-being. The more people help, the better they feel psychologically. And they've looked at this in all different measures of well-being or helping behavior, such as giving. If you spend money on other people, you feel better than if you spend money on yourself. If you donate to charity, you feel better than people who do not donate to charity. If you volunteer, you feel more psychologically healthy than people who do not volunteer, and so on and so forth. So what we did was we looked at bronies, anime fans, and furries. And for the first two studies, our indicator of well-being was self-esteem, and then the last study was a longer measure of psychological well-being. And then we asked about helping. So within the fandom, how often do you help other people in the fandom, intra-group helping? And in terms of helping, this was a 5-point scale, so this is the midpoint at 3. So the type of helping that's given most is advice to other people. The least is you're not letting people crash at your house very often. Okay, but we find that fandom is related to well-being and it's mediated through intra-group helping. In other words, the more you identify with other people in this room, the more likely you are to help the other people in this room. And when you're helping other people in this room, you feel better psychologically. You feel happier. And does that make sense? That leaves everybody on that one?
No.
It's starting. You know that when you're giving a lecture, everything gets silent? It's starting. Eyes start to glaze over. Let's talk about values. So there is this one guy, Schwartz, who put out the 10 universal values. Here are the 10 universal values that he says are universal. You find them in every culture. So power, achievement, hedonism, stimulation, self-direction, universalism, benevolence, tradition, conformity, and security. We gave a measure of this. And I should say this. There are higher order factors within this. So universalism and benevolence is related to self-transcendence. And then self-direction, stimulation, and part of hedonism is related to openness to change. This will become, I'm highlighting this because it may come up again in a minute. So we gave y'all a measure of these 10 different values, and we also measured in-group identification, how much you love the other people in this room and out there. The highest rated in terms of mean ratings were universalism. So this was a 7-point scale, so anything above 4 is I agree, I'm high on those values. Anything below 4 is you do not agree or you're low on those values. And so anime fans do not especially value power, and they do not especially value traditions, specifically religious traditions. Y'all aren't very religious. So if you remember back to self-categorization theory, the theory goes that the more you identify with the group, the more you adhere to the norms of the group. Values are part of the norms of the group. So the more you identify with the group, if it's correlated with specific values, the more those values are connected to the group. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. These are the ones that are most correlated. Also note that most of these were also the ones that were most highly rated. In other words, these are the ones that are most connected to the identity of anime fandom. So what are those two values? If we grouped it up into the higher order, it was self-transcendence and openness to change. And other studies look looking at the past, what does this mean? People who are high on self-transcendence are very good workers. They're committed to their workplaces. They do political activism in some way. They believe in people having civil liberties. They're accepting of immigrants coming to one's country. They believe in environmental sustainability and corporations doing the right thing. Does that sound like anime fans? Woo! Okay.
Yeah.
And then openness to change in other studies is related to an openness to interact with people from other cultures, diverse cultures. In other words, anime fans are related to those things, and I think we'll see in a minute that anime fans also endorse those things if they're measured differently. So I do a lot of work, because I do a lot of fandom research, but I also do some research on global citizenship. And I came up with this model of global citizenship, which is normative environment is your friends, family, people around you value being a global citizen. They think being a global citizen is a good thing. Global awareness is you think you know a lot about the world. You measure whether you know a lot and whatever. You think you know a lot, you feel connected with other people in the rest of the world. Those two things predict global citizen identification, which is, again, identification is the degree of psychological connection with this category group, global citizen. And then the more you identify with something, the more you should endorse values and behaviors. And the values and behaviors related to global citizenship are empathy, valuing diversity, social justice beliefs, environmentalism, and intergroup helping people in other groups and feeling a responsibility to act for a betterment of the world. We've asked fans, just general fans, sport fans, music fans, all fans, do you believe that other people in your fan interest group would value being a global citizen? And that predicted the model of both the antecedents and the outcomes of global citizenship identification. In other words, your fandom has an influence on how you see yourself in connection to the rest of the world. And it has an influence on these pro-social values. So when we did this, it was any fan. And we just thought, well, there's the people who make anime, there's the voice actors in anime, there's the other anime fans, there's the actual content of the anime, like the messages within the show. For example, well, I'm not going to get into it. Oh, you're making me think I should go back and do this as hentai fans and see if there's a difference. I could go back into that data. I got to remember that. So this is how we measured it. So we said, well, okay, there's these 4 possible sources of influence within the anime fandom. There's the content of the shows, there's the people who create it, there are the voice actors, then there's the other people in the room here. So who has the most influence on your identification and values? Identification was related to all of these things. Being high, that you think the content is global citizenry, you think the creators would endorse it, you think voice actors would endorse it, you think other fans would endorse it, you would then say, yes, I'm a global citizen. The means on the pro-social values were all above the midpoint. So if you remember, I was talking about the self-transcendence was related to environmental sustainability, and lo and behold, environmentalism is very, very high. So again, y'all care about the environment. But that could just be because y'all are young. And I think younger people, whatever, I'm not kidding. So here was the model. What predicts the model? The content of the model was significant, so the more anime that you believe anime that you're watching is global citizen, you would say you're more of a global citizen. Anime creators was not significant, so they did not have much influence over you. Voice actors had a small influence on your identification and values, and that was through the normative environment. So another way of interpreting this is you feel like voice actors are part of your groupie-ish, whereas you didn't think the creators were. Other fans had the strongest influence, the highest betas, which means that y'all are very influential in what each of you believe. So you have power of creating the norms of the group. When you say, oh, that wasn't a very nice thing to do, don't mess up the hotel, that's very powerful. Okay, so what did we learn from last year? The main things we learned from last year were anime fans don't dream about anime. The fandom is very inclusive. You're very open and accepting of people of all different genders and ethnicities. Fanship and commitment predicted elitism and gatekeeping. Fandom was good. It was negatively related to those things. Helping other people is good for you. So maybe give blood. Values of self-transcendence and openness to change were the main values related to the identity content of being an anime fan. And then other fans, the content and voice actors predicted global citizenship and pro-social values. And there's a bunch of other stuff, but we don't have all the time to analyze it yet, and that's in the future for the next year possibly, if we get time. Our table is located over there by the bridge. There's the dealer's room entrance right there. There, on a different map, there's an X indicating where our table is located. There are the times we will be at that table.
Which floor is this at?
This is the second floor on the convention center side. Over there.
Do you have the GPS location?
I did actually bring the GPS location. And I'm not going to have a question and answer because y'all can come and talk to me tomorrow. If you want to bring, if you're going to come back tomorrow, we got some paper pencil ones. If you want to grab one of those when you leave. Tanner, who is no longer an undergraduate, who is now a graduate student.
You're good.
Also, please tell your friends that we have this online. If you Google anime research, you'll find our website. It will be up until September 30th. If all of y'all got 10 friends to do it, and they got 10 friends to do it, and they got 10 friends, our snowballing technique would be great, and we would have a huge sample, and then I could come back next year and talk about that sample. And that was it. Thank you.